Under the black flag of the golden age of piracy, one coin decided the fate of empires. Not gold, not jewels, a fractured wedge of Spanish silver, the piece of 8, bankrolled every pirate voyage. Picture the scene: a tavern in a blood-soaked port, a sailor biting the edge of a silver disc. He weighs it in his palm, listens to it ring against the wood, and whispers a careful price. Around him, other men do the same, not counting doubloons, not fondling emeralds, but handling Spanish reales. The myth says pirates chased gold. The myth is wrong. Gold was merely the trophy. Silver was the engine. The golden age of piracy spanned 1650 to 1730 to 80 years of brutal, lawless oceanic commerce. The Caribbean was the crucible, the Atlantic the artery, the Indian Ocean the far frontier of the richest prizes. Spain, Portugal, England, France and the Netherlands all bled treasure across these sea lanes. Empires built on extraction. Extraction meant silver. Thousands of tons dug from the Americas, cast into coins, shipped east for silks and spices. Shipped north to pay armies. Shipped everywhere to keep the vast, hungry machinery of empire endlessly turning. Wherever silver moved, predators followed close behind. Along those trade routes rose ports without kings, cities beyond every crown. Port Royal, on the southern coast of Jamaica, was called the wickedest city on earth by honest men. Tortuga, a rocky nest off the coast of Hispaniola, where buccaneers sharpened their brutal trade in blood. Nassau, a shallow harbor in the Bahamas, briefly became a republic of pirates, men who signed articles in blood. These were not simple hideouts. They were markets. They were banks. They were laundries for stolen Spanish coin. Every stolen real that entered these blood-soaked ports found a merchant willing to accept it, no questions asked. Every governor who signed a commission of mark took his cut in silver, quietly and without shame. Every shipwright, every powder seller, every rum trader spoke one universal language, the language of Spanish reales. Because in this age, one coin ruled every deck, accepted from Boston to Bombay, feared, desired, hoarded. It funded revolts and paid ransoms. It bought loyalty and it betrayed loyalty in the same breath. Every voyage under the black flag began and ended with a single stamped disc of Spanish silver. And here is the paradox at the very center of everything you think you know about pirates today. They did not hoard chests. They did not bury fortunes beneath palm trees marked with a crooked X. That image belongs to fiction. In reality, the men who sailed beneath the skull and crossbones were spenders. Their wages were paid in reales. Their gunpowder, their rum, their salted pork, all bought in reales. Their sailcloth, their fresh masts, their bribes to harbor officials, every single last coin was Spanish silver. When a prize was taken, the coin was counted on deck, divided by the articles, and rushed ashore fast. Within weeks, most was gone, spent, circulated, alive again in the pockets of merchants and prostitutes ashore. No captain refused the piece of 8, the one coin that crossed every border, every flag, every faith. French buccaneers, Dutch privateers, English pirates, Muslim corsairs, all recognized its weight, its ring, its stamped pillars of Hercules. Why 8? Why silver? Why Spanish? These questions carry one answer waiting 3 miles above the sea. On a red mountain in what is now Bolivia, to understand the coin, we must follow it to Potosí. Cerro Rico, the rich mountain, called by those who worked it the mountain that ate men alive. It rises from the Andean plateau, red rock streaked with silver so pure miners once scraped it by hand. When Spanish conquerors arrived in the 1540s, they found perhaps the single richest silver deposit in human history. And they built a city at its foot, Potosi, within decades one of the largest cities on earth. Larger than London, larger than Seville, a boomtown at 14,000 feet where thin air killed newcomers. And below the streets, in the black arteries of Cerro Rico, men died by the tens of thousands. The labor system was called the mita, villages forced to send their men into the mountain in endless rotations. They descended rope ladders into shafts that grew deeper each year, breathing dust that scarred their lungs forever. They handled mercury for the amalgamation, the chemical marriage that separated pure silver from crushed raw ore. The mercury poisoned them slowly, ruined their nerves, blackened their gums, turned their teeth to ash. Estimates of the dead across 3 centuries reach hundreds of thousands, some say more. Cerro Rico consumed lives. It did not simply produce silver. Every coin that jingled in a pirate's purse carried that invisible weight. At the base of the mountain stood the mint, the Casa de Moneda, where refined silver was hammered. Later milled into standardized discs, the most famous was the Ocho Reales, 8 reales, the pirate's legendary coin. Roughly the diameter of a modern silver dollar, containing approximately 27 grams of nearly pure silver from Potosi. Why 8? The Spanish real was the base unit, and 8 made the standard trading dollar of the empire. And because 8 divided cleanly. The coin was, in practice, often literally cut on tavern planks by ruthless sailors. A sailor short of change placed his piece of 8 on a plank, splitting it into 8 triangular wedges. Each wedge a bit. 2 bits, a quarter. 4 bits, a half, still echoing in American slang today. To defeat clipping, shaving slivers of silver from the edge for private profit, means adopted milled edges. Fine grooves stamped around the rim. If disturbed, the theft was obvious. The coin's reputation was forever transformed. A milled real could be trusted. And trust, under the black flag, was worth more than the silver itself. From the mountain, the silver moved, an act of engineering that would shape the entire golden age of piracy. The Spanish crown organized their treasure into fleets, the Flota de Indias, annual convoys gathering silver across the Americas. These convoys sailed east across the Atlantic to Seville, and later Cadiz, in a system of extraordinary discipline. Pacific ports of South America shipped bullion north to Panama, then overland through jungle to the Caribbean coast. At Portobello, the Great Fair opened, and merchants from across Europe converged to trade for the arriving cargo. From Portobello and Cartagena, the treasure galleons sailed to Havana, the rendezvous where 2 great fleets united. There, the Tierra Firme fleet joined the New Spain fleet, and together, under escort, they made the Atlantic crossing. They caught the Florida Straits and Gulf Stream east across the Atlantic toward the Azores, then home to Spain. The galleons rode low in the water, holds packed with reales stacked in wooden chests, silver and gold ingots. Chests of cochineal dye, sacks of tobacco, bundles of indigo, escorted by warships bearing sealed captains' orders. Their sailing dates were secrets guarded by imperial decree, and still, inevitably, the news leaked from within. Informants sold sailing schedules in Havana's taverns. Traitorous clerks in Seville whispered precise timings to waiting French agents. Prevailing winds were common knowledge. Hurricane season narrowed the departure windows to a handful of predictable weeks. Every predator on the Atlantic knew, in general terms, when the silver would sail beneath the black flag. On the horizon, sloops waited. Fast, low, shallow-drafted vessels, the pirate's weapon of choice under the black flag. A sloop could hide in coves too shallow for a galleon, dart out at first sight of sail, close the distance with the wind, gone before a warship gave chase. Fortune favored the ruthless who struck first. But even the ruthless rarely won the great prize. The treasure fleets sailed guarded, well-armed, escorted by warships. The odds of taking a full galleon of silver were slim. Most pirates instead took smaller, humbler prizes. Merchantmen, slavers, coastal traders, vessels carrying not the whole harvest but the seepage, and that seepage was enough. Now we come to the piece of the story that undoes centuries of legend. The buried treasure itself. The chest beneath the sand, the map with an X, almost none of it ever actually happened. There is exactly one documented case in the historical record of a Golden Age pirate burying his treasure. Captain Kidd in 1699 buried part of his cargo on Gardiner's Island off the coast of Long Island. A desperate attempt to hold leverage over his political enemies, but it was dug up within mere weeks, used as evidence at his trial in London, and Captain Kidd was hanged beneath the Black Flag. That single incident, embellished by Edgar Allan Poe in his story The Gold Bug, seeded the legend. Later, Robert Louis Stevenson in Treasure Island invented the entire mythology of buried pirate treasure and its maps. In reality, pirates did the opposite. They spent everything as fast as they could in blood-soaked ports. Consider the logic. A pirate's life expectancy was measured in months, not years. Caught, hanged, drowned, or shot. Why bury silver for a future that would almost certainly never come? Better to drink it, gamble it away. Better to buy a woman's company for a week, a new pistol, silk shirt, warm bed on land. And so the reales flowed, from the galleon's hold, into the pirate's pocket, into the tavern keeper's till, into the merchant's strongbox, into the governor's coffer, and back out again to fund the next voyage. Under the black flag, they ran on cash flow, not cashes, a circulating economy, not a hoarding one. The coin that made every circulation possible was the piece of eight, the silver spine of empire. But what they didn't know was who profited most. The pirates spent the silver, the colonial elites saved it. In the ledgers of legitimate merchants, New York, Boston, Charleston, Bristol, Amsterdam, Spanish reales piled quietly. Piracy did not merely steal from empires. It transferred silver from imperial vaults into a rising mercantile class. That transfer, more than any raid, reshaped the modern world. Let us name the man who moved this coin. Henry Avery, English pirate. 1695, off India's coast, he struck the Ganges Savai, Emperor Aurangzeb's treasure ship. The haul was staggering. Estimates ran to hundreds of thousands of pounds sterling in gold, silver, and jewels. The reales taken that day rippled outward through the pirate economy for years. Avery himself vanished. His men scattered. Some settled quietly in the American colonies, buying farms with silver stamped in Potosi and Mexico City. The empire's response was fury. The first international manhunt in history was launched. It never caught him. Edward Teach, Blackbeard. In 1718, he blockaded Charleston Harbor, seizing hostages from the town's leading families. His ransom demand was almost absurd. Not gold, not jewels, a chest of medicines and safe passage. But behind the medicine chest lay a larger appetite. Blackbeard also took 1,500 pounds sterling from captured merchants, most of it in Spanish reales. Within months, that silver scattered across the taverns of the Carolina coast. Bartholomew Roberts, Black Bart, the most successful pirate captain, 400 vessels taken in his brief career. His greatest strike came off Brazil, a Portuguese treasure ship laden with gold, jewels, and 40,000 moidores. But reales, taken across dozens of other captures, paid his crew from West Africa to the Caribbean. And behind them all, the Republic of Nassau. For a decade, the Bahamas harbored thousands of pirates. Reales poured through Nassau's harbor. Merchants from the American colonies sailed in with supplies, sailed out with silver. Governors in Jamaica, in Virginia, in the Carolinas quietly took their cut, asking no questions about provenance. Bristol traders in England grew rich on cargoes never questioned. The entire Atlantic economy laundered the piece of eight. One voyage, more than any other, would turn the coin into legend. The final voyage of Black Sam. Samuel Bellamy, Black Sam. Young, charismatic, and briefly the wealthiest pirate in all of recorded human history. In 1716, he captured a slave ship called the Whydah Galley off the coast of Cuba. He took her for his flagship, filling her holds with the accumulated plunder of dozens of prior captures. Hundreds of thousands of coins, silver bars, gold dust, ivory, indigo, a floating treasury under the black flag. By some estimates, the Whydah carried the greatest concentration of pirate wealth ever assembled aboard a single vessel. And Bellamy meant to sail her home, not to a hideout, but to the coast of Cape Cod. There he would settle with a young woman named Maria Hallett and live out his days on solid land. Spending his silver like the merchant princes he had spent his entire life robbing, he never arrived. On the 26th of April 1717, a nor'easter caught the Whydah off the coast of Cape Cod. The winds rose to hurricane force. Visibility collapsed. The ship was driven onto a sandbar near shore. She broke apart within hours. Of the roughly 146 men aboard, only 2 survived. Bellamy was not among them. His body was never identified. The wreck lay beneath the sand for centuries. Rediscovered in 1984 by underwater archaeologist Barry Clifford, the seabed rewrote the true history of piracy. Because the Whydah is the only fully authenticated Golden Age pirate wreck ever recovered, the only one, and what it revealed was not chests of gold, it was silver, thousands upon thousands of Spanish reales. Stamped in mints from Mexico City to Potosi to Lima, spanning decades of production, carried in bags. Mingled with African trade beads, Akan gold jewelry, French and English cannons, personal weapons, dice, pipes, buckles. The archaeology showed the coin's true reach, reales from every corner of the vast Spanish Empire's domain. Held in the hold of an English pirate ship sailing off the coast of colonial New England, one vessel, one wreck, a perfect cross-section of a global economy running on Potosi silver alone. The wreck exposed how the whole brutal system worked, from silver mine to galleon hold to tavern. Piracy was not a marginal criminal enterprise on the edges of civilization, it was in fact central, a central node in the world's first truly global economy, and the Peace of Eight made it possible. The story does not end with the drowning of Samuel Bellamy, in many ways it begins there. The Peace of Eight, the Spanish milled dollar, would outlive every captain who ever spent it aboard. Through the 1700s, it circulated across the Americas, through Asia, through the distant courts of Europe. In the newly independent United States, it was legal tender for decades after the Revolution had ended. The first American coins were designed to precisely match its weight, the standard of a new republic. The word dollar itself comes from the German Thaler, but the coin Americans held was Spanish silver. For generations they called it dollar, but it was Spanish silver from Potosi, that ruthless fortune enduring. The dollar sign, capital S crossed by vertical strokes, is believed to have evolved from the pillars of Hercules. Wrapped in ribbon, they adorned the reverse of the Piece of Eight, an echo carried in every modern price. 2 bits, meaning 25 cents, comes directly from chopping the 8 reales coin into 8 silver wedges. Shave and a haircut, 2 bits. That phrase, hummed in modern kitchens, is a fossil of a pirate-era transaction. Robert Louis Stevenson published Treasure Island in 1883, and the myth survived, distorted almost beyond recognition. In that book, the parrot on Long John Silver's shoulder screams 2 words over and over, pieces of 8. That parrot fixed the phrase, but also fixed a lie. Buried chests, maps, X marks, hoarded fortunes waiting. The truth was flatter, harder, more interesting. The coin was not buried. The coin was spent across continents. It funded a global underworld, enriching respectable merchants, killing men in Bolivian mines and off Cape Cod alike. It built counting houses in London and Amsterdam, surviving every captain, every ship, every empire that briefly held it. The silver still speaks. Off Cape Cod, more reales lie beneath the seabed, waiting to be raised again. In museums from Madrid to Manila, the milled edges still catch the light. The coin persists 3 centuries later. The golden age of piracy ended, more or less, by 1730. The Royal Navy had grown too strong. The colonial governors grew respectable. Nassau was tamed. Blackbeard's severed head hung from a bowsprit in Virginia's tidewaters. Bartholomew Roberts fell to grapeshot off West Africa. The great captains were hanged one by one at Execution Dock, their bodies left to swing through 3 tides at Wapping as a warning to every soul aboard sail. But the Peace of Eight sailed on, through revolution, through Napoleon's wars, through the opium trade with China, through the silver famines of the 1800s, the peace endured, the world's first truly international currency. Every empire that followed learned its trade from the Spanish silver dollar and the men who chased it. The truth behind the myth is not the treasure. The truth is the current, relentless, unstoppable circulation. One coin flowing through a lawless economy that shaped the modern world. Pirates built no fortunes, only cash flow. And cash flow, then as now, ruled every port, every deck, every horizon under the black flag forever. If you want to know how the Republic of Nassau fell, how the last pirates were hunted down, how a royal pardon ended the era of the black flag, the next video waits on the channel. Subscribe and raise the black flag with us. Join the crew and set sail into the next story. There are more voyages beneath the waves, and the